Vicky Price is the Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economics and Business Research. I asked her what she thought of the new Prime Minister's plans for the UK economy.
I think the most important issue to deal with is the energy crisis, and there's already been a very strong indication that something will be done in that area by reducing the cost to consumers in particular, but also businesses, maybe through a freeze of the electricity price cap. That would be, of course, very welcome, both to households and to firms, which have had these very, very substantial increases in prices to deal with. And, of course, that has led to a drop in consumer confidence and a drop in business confidence as well. Then, of course, we've got indeed the Trustonomics issue, which has to do with tax declines. It's interesting, really, because the UK was one of the few countries just recently raising taxes rather than lowering them, whereas the rest of Europe was going the other direction, trying to assist the economy and ensure that it carried on growing. We raised taxes because we needed to spend more on national health, but also as a way of getting finances back into some sort of order. Well, that may well now be reversed because Liz Truss, as new Prime Minister, doesn't like what was done, even though, of course, she was in the cabinet before. What she intends to do or wants to do, as has announced she would like to do, is reduce the national insurance contribution increase that we saw in the last budget, and also not go ahead with the increase in corporation tax that was going to take place next financial year. So that's quite significant. It means a lot less revenue coming from those activities, and that is something which is worrying a little bit in terms of how much more borrowing would we need to do to keep services going, and also how do you pay for this freeze in electricity prices, which of course is going to cost quite a lot of money.
Cutting taxes will put more money into people's pockets. Won't that just worsen inflation, which is already at a 40-year high?
Possibly, but of course it depends what people do with it. The reality is that it's people at the lower end of the pay scale who spend most of their income, if you like, or whatever it is that they receive, possibly benefits, on consumption generally, and particularly, of course, on the most important items, which are energy and food. And those prices have been determined very much in the international global market, and spending or being able to at least afford those items isn't necessarily going to lead to any increase in inflation.
And let's finish with the R word then. Many think the UK might already be in recession. Can it be avoided?
It's probably unlikely that will be avoided. We're seeing what's happening in the continent as well. I mean, remember the UK, despite having left the EU, is still dependent to a considerable extent on trade with Europe. Europe is slowing down, and there are serious concerns about what will happen to gas supplies in the winter, and that will affect the UK as well. There is no doubt about that. Now, reversing the sort of drop that has been forecast will depend hugely on what happens elsewhere. What we're seeing right now is that although services remain reasonably okay, manufacturing is in decline, and if we see that extended, that manufacturing decline in other parts of Europe because they have to maybe ration supplies of energy, possibly, or reducing already some of the activity there, that will in many ways heighten some of the concerns we already have on supply chains, and it will make life much more difficult for the manufacturing sector anyway. So I think a slowdown is definitely on the cards, and a recession is probably still forecast by most economists.